Ja, wegen seiner Teilnahme am Staatsbegräbnis für Queen Elizabeth in London hatte Joe Biden seine Rede auf den zweiten Tag der UN-Vollversammlung verschoben. Euronews sendet jetzt die Generalvollversammlung der UN in New York, wo Joe Biden, der US-Präsident, seine Rede halten wird. Ja, es wird erwartet, dass sich Biden zum Angriffskrieg Russlands in der Ukraine äußern wird und zu den neuesten Entwicklungen. Der russische Präsident Wladimir Putin hat am Morgen in einer Rede an die Nation eine Teilmobilmachung angeordnet, die ab dem heutigen Mittwoch gelten soll. Putin begründete den Schritt damit, die Souveränität und territoriale Integrität Russlands schützen sowie die Sicherheit der Bevölkerung gewährleisten zu wollen. Von der Teilmobilmachung sind rund 300.000 Reservisten betroffen, die bereits in den Streitkräften gedient haben.
Thank you. Mr. President, Mr. Secretary General,
Herr Präsident,
fellow leaders, in the last year our world has
im vergangenen Jahr hat sich unsere Welt stark verändert. Viele Krisen sind hinzugekommen.
Floods and droughts, COVID-19, inflation,
Corona,
brutal, needless war.
der brutale Krieg.
By one man, to be very blunt. Let us speak plainly. A permanent member of the United Nations Security Council invaded its neighbor.
Ein ständiges Mitglied des Sicherheitsrates hat seinen Nachbar angegriffen, sagt Biden.
Russia has shamelessly violated the core tenets of the United Nations Charter. No more important than the clear prohibition against countries taking the territory of their neighbor by force. Again, just today, President Putin
Heute hat Putin wieder mit nuklearen Waffen gedroht, sagt Biden.
Now, Russia is calling up more soldiers.
Und heute Russland wird neue Soldaten einberufen. Wir werden Scheinreferenden einführen.
Significant violation of the UN Charter. This world should see these outrageous acts for what they are. Putin claims he had to act because Russia was threatened.
Putin sagt, Russland reagiert nur, weil es angegriffen wird.
No one other than Russia sought conflict. In fact, we warned it was coming, and with many of you we worked to try to avert it. Putin's own words make his true purpose unmistakable. Just before he invaded, Putin asserted, and I quote, Ukraine was created by Russia and never had, quote, real statehood. And now we see attacks on schools, railway stations, hospitals, on centers of Ukrainian history and culture.
Die ukrainische Kultur wird angegriffen, sagt Biden. Raketen werden auf Kindergärten und Krankenhäuser geschossen. Das ist die Situation in der Ukraine, die durch Russland nun entstanden ist. Es wird Gewalt ausgeübt. Der Krieg geht gegen die Souveränität der Ukraine. Wo immer jeder lebt, was er auch immer glaubt, das lässt einem das Blut gefrieren, sagt Biden. Und wir können diesen Krieg nur scharf verurteilen, so Biden. Und die Ukraine weiterhin unterstützen.
Our allies and partners around the world have stepped up as well. And today, more than 40 countries
Ich rufe die Verbündeten weltweit auf, diesen Krieg zu beenden und der Ukraine zu helfen, sich zu verteidigen.
to deter attacks against NATO territory, to hold Russia accountable for the atrocities and war crimes. Because if nations can pursue their imperial ambitions without consequences, then we put at risk everything this very institution stands for.
Attacken Russlands können nicht ohne Konsequenzen
Every victory
bleiben.
won on the battlefield belongs to the courageous Ukrainian soldiers. But this past year, the world was tested as well. And we did not hesitate. We chose liberty. We chose sovereignty. We chose principles to which
Es
every
gibt
party
Freiheit, es gibt Souveränität, es gibt Grundsätze, an denen man sich zu richten hat, in denen wir leben wollen, so Biden.
like you, the United States wants this war to end on just terms, on terms we all signed up for, that you cannot seize a nation's territory by force.
Und man kann nicht
The only country
das Territorium eines Landes einfach begrenzen, angreifen.
So we, each of us in this body, who's determined to uphold the principles and beliefs,
Jeder, der für die Grundsätze steht, in denen wir leben, mit denen wir leben,
clear, firm, and unwavering in our resolve. Ukraine has the same rights.
jedem muss klar sein, dass die Ukraine dieselben Rechte hat wie jede andere Nation.
We will stand in solidarity against Russia's aggression. Period. Now, it's no secret that in the contest between democracy and autocracy, the United States and I as President champion a vision for our world that's grounded in the values of democracy. The United States is determined to defend and strengthen democracy at home and around the world because I believe democracy remains humanity's greatest instrument to address the challenges of our time. We're working with the G7 and like-minded countries to prove democracies can deliver for their citizens, but also deliver for the rest of the world as well.
Die USA setzen sich dafür ein, die demokratischen Werte
The UN Charter,
zu verteidigen.
The UN Charter's very basis of a stable and just rule-based order is under attack by those who wish to tear it down or distort it for their own political advantage. And the United Nations Charter was
Die
not
Charta der
only signed by
Vereinten
democracies of the
Nationen
world. It was negotiated among
steht für
citizens,
Demokratie,
dozens of nations,
die von Dutzenden
vastly different
Nationen
histories and ideologies,
unterschrieben wurden.
in their commitment to work for peace.
Die Verpflichtungen für den Frieden einzustehen. 1945 wurde diese Charta gegründet.
Can state their differences, can face them, and then can find common ground on which to stand. End of quote. That common ground was so straightforward, so basic, that today 193 of you, 193 member states have willingly embraced its principles.
Und für diese Grundsätze stehen alle 193 Mitgliedsländer der Vereinten Nationen.
Is the job of every responsible member state. I reject the use of violence and war to conquer nations or
Ich
expand
weise
borders through bloodshed.
diesen Krieg
To stand
zurück.
against global politics, fear and coercion. To defend the sovereign rights of smaller
Die
nations.
Souveränität von
Those of larger
kleineren Staaten muss gewährleistet sein.
basic principles like freedom of navigation, respect for international law, and arms control. No matter what else we may disagree on, that is the common ground upon which we must stand. If you're still committed to a strong foundation for the good of every nation around the world, then the United States wants to work with you. I also believe the time has come for this institution to become more inclusive so that it can better respond to the needs of today's world. Members of the UN Security Council, including the United States, should consistently uphold and defend the UN Charter and refrain from the use of the veto, except in rare, extraordinary situations, to ensure that the Council remains credible and effective. That is also why the United States supports increasing the number of both permanent and non-permanent representatives of the Council. This includes permanent seats for those nations we have long supported and permanent seats for countries in Africa, Latin America, and the Caribbean. The United States is committed to this vital work. In every region, we pursued new, constructive ways to work with partners to advance shared interests, from elevating the Quad in the Indo-Pacific.
Also die USA wollen vorangehen, was die Grundsätze der Vereinten Nationen betrifft, sich für Staaten einzusetzen, deren Souveränität nicht gewährleistet ist, sagt Biden.
Hosting the US-Africa Leaders Summit in this December. As I said last year, the United States is opening an era of relentless diplomacy to address the challenges that matter most to people's lives, all people's lives. Tackling climate crisis, as the previous speaker
Und Joe Biden spricht auch andere Krisen an, wie etwa die Klimakrise, die alle bedroht, die Welt bedroht. Auch die Ernährungssicherheit muss gewährleistet werden.
From the day I came to office, we've led with bold climate agenda. We rejoined the Paris Agreement, convened
Und er sagt, dass er sich seit seinem Beginn als US-Präsident für diese Krisen, letztlich gegen diese Krisen einsetzt und alles dafür tut, um diese einzugrenzen. Das ist der größte Kompromiss, der Klimakompromiss, eingelöst worden, die die US-Geschichte kennt.
Doubling down on zero-emission vehicles, increasing energy efficiency, supporting clean manufacturing. Our Department of Energy estimates that this new law will reduce U.S. emissions by 1 gigaton a year by 2030, while unleashing a new era of clean energy-powered economic growth. Our investments will also help reduce the cost of developing clean energy technologies worldwide, not just in the United States. This is a global game changer, and none too soon. We don't have much time.
Joe Biden spricht auch von der grünen Energie, der regenerativen Energie, die unbedingt kommen soll. Die USA machen sich dafür stark und dies sei ein wichtiger Punkt, ein sogenannter Game Changer, um die Klimakrise einzudämmen. Es gibt durch die Klimakrise sind mittlerweile viele Familien bedroht, die in Armut gestürzt werden.
My administration is working with our Congress to deliver more than $11 billion a year to international climate finance.
Milliarden Dollar werden jährlich bereitgestellt von der US-Regierung.
Just energy transition. The key part of that will be our PEPFAR plan, which will help 500 million people in especially vulnerable countries adapt to the impacts of climate change and build resilience. This need is enormous. So let this be the moment we find within ourselves the will to turn back the tide of climate devastation, and unlock a resilient, sustainable, clean energy economy to preserve our planet.
Die Welt muss zurückkommen, um den Planet zu schützen. Man muss sich dagegen wehren. Man muss zusammenstehen.
All free of charge, no strings attached, and we're working closely with the G20 and other countries in the United States. Help lead the change to establish a groundbreaking new fund for pandemic prevention, preparedness, and response at the World Bank. At the same time, we've continued to advance the ball on enduring global health challenges. Later today, I'll host the 7th Replenishment Conference for the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis and malaria.
US-Präsident Biden sagt auch 18 Milliarden Dollar zur Auffüllung des weltweiten Fonds bereitzustellen, um Krankheiten wie AIDS, Tuberkulose und Malaria zu bekämpfen.
We're also taking down the food crisis head on
Er spricht auch um die weltweite Ernährungssicherheit.
Experience acute food insecurity. A jump of 40 million in a year. Today I'm announcing another $2.9 billion.
Er kündigt 2,9 Milliarden Dollar an, die bereitgestellt werden sollen durch die USA, um die Ernährungssicherheit zu gewährleisten. Russland ist auch dafür verantwortlich mit seiner Invasion in der Ukraine, die Auswirkungen des Klimawandels und die dadurch verursachte Nahrungsmittelknappheit zu beschleunigen, sagt Joe Biden.
Russia the ability to export food and fertilizer. No limitation. It's Russia's war.
Es ist Russlands Krieg, der gegen die die Ernährungssicherheit angreift und auch die Sicherheit.
Establishing a mechanism to export grain from Black Sea ports in Ukraine that Russia had blocked for months.
Er spricht auch die Blockade der Russen an die Häfen im Schwarzen Meer, die ukrainischen Häfen im Schwarzen Meer betreffen, wodurch viele Nahrungsmittel wie etwa Mais, Getreide nicht ausgeliefert werden konnten und so zur Nahrungsmittelkrise in der Welt beigetragen haben. Wir müssen etwas tun, um die weltweite Nahrungsmittelsicherheit zu gewährleisten, sagt Joe Biden.
In June, the G7 announced more than $4.5 billion to strengthen food security around the world.
Er spricht auch auf die Ankündigung der letzten G7-Vollversammlung, G7-Versammlung an im vergangenen Juni.
And heat-resistant seeds into the hands of farmers who need them, while distributing fertilizer and improving fertilizer efficiency so that farmers can grow more while using less. And we're calling on all countries to refrain from banning food exports or hoarding grain.
Er spricht auch sämtliche Länder an, um beim Weizenexport mitzuhelfen.
Nothing else matters if parents cannot feed their children. As we look to the future, we're working with our partners to update and create rules of the road for new challenges we face in the 21st century. We launched the Trade and Technology Council with the European Union to ensure that key technologies are developed and governed in the way that benefits everyone. With our partner countries and through the UN, we're supporting and strengthening the norms of responsibility, responsible state behavior in cyberspace, and working to hold accountable those who use cyber attacks to threaten international peace and security. With partners in the Americas, Africa, Europe, and the Middle East, and the Indo-Pacific, we're working to build a new economic ecosystem.
Er redet von einem neuen wirtschaftlicher Zusammenarbeit Afrikas, Europas, dem Nahen Osten, das errichtet werden soll.
So major corporations pay their fair share everywhere. It's also been the idea behind the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, which the United States launched this year with 13 other Indo-Pacific economies. We're working with our partners in ASEAN and the Pacific Islands to support a vision for a critical Indo-Pacific region that is free and open, connected and prosperous, secure and resilient. Together with partners around the world, we're working to secure resilient supply chains that protect everyone from coercion or domination, and ensure that no country can use energy as a weapon.
Niemand soll Energie als Waffe benutzen, so wie es Russland tut.
The non-Paris Club countries to transparently negotiate debt forgiveness for lower-income countries, to forestall broader economic and political crisis around the world. Instead of infrastructure projects that generate huge and large debt without delivering on the promised advantages, let's meet the enormous infrastructure needs around the world with transparent investments, high-standard projects that protect the rights of workers and the environment, key to the needs of the communities they serve, not to the contributor. That's why the United States, together with fellow G7 partners, launched a Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment. We intend to collectively mobilize $600 billion in investment through this partnership by 2027. Dozens of projects are already underway. Industrial-scale vaccine manufacturing in Senegal, transformative solar projects in Angola, first-of-its-kind small modular nuclear power plant in Romania.
Er spricht auch ökonomische Entwicklungen an, die Corona-Krise, erneuerbare Energien in Angola, wo man sich zusammentun muss.
To the United States or any other nation. And walking away hurts the entire world. Let me be direct about the competition between the United States and China. As we manage shifting geopolitical trends, the United States will conduct itself as a reasonable leader. We do not seek conflict. We do not seek a Cold
Auch
War.
bezüglich China suchen die USA keinen Konflikt.
Or any other partner.
Aufgrund der aktuellen Spannungen
Unabashed in promoting our vision of a free, open, secure and prosperous world.
USA würden für Sicherheit einstehen und eine sich
Investments that are
entwickelnde
designed
Welt.
to foster dependency, but to alleviate burdens and help nations become self-sufficient. Partnerships not to create political obligation, but because we know our own success. Each of our successes increase when other nations succeed as well. When individuals have the chance to live in dignity and develop their talents, everyone benefits. Critical to that is living up to the highest goals of this institution, increasing peace and security for everyone, everywhere. The United States will not waver in our unrelenting determination to counter and thwart the continuing terrorist threats to our world. And we will lead with our diplomacy to strive for peaceful resolution of conflicts. We seek to uphold peace and stability across the Taiwan Straits. We remain committed to our one China policy, which has helped prevent conflict for 4 decades.
Er spricht auch den Konflikt Chinas mit Taiwan an,
By either side.
an dem auch die USA beteiligt sind. Und die Spannungen in der Taiwanstraße.
We urge the Venezuelan-led dialogue and return to free and fair elections. We continue to stand with our neighbor in Haiti as it faces political, fueled gang violence and an enormous human crisis. And we call on the world to do the same. We have more to do.
Er
Continue to back the
sagt,
UN-mediated truce in Yemen, which has delivered precious months of peace to people that have suffered years of war. And we will continue to advocate for lasting negotiating peace between the Jewish and Democratic State of Israel and the Palestinian people. The United States is committed to Israel's security, full stop.
Er spricht auch den Konflikt im Nahen Osten an zwischen Israel und Palästina, der so viele Spannungen erzeugt.
To which they are entitled. Both sides to fully respect the equal rights of their citizens. Both people enjoying equal measure of freedom and dignity. Let me also urge every nation to recommit to strengthening a nuclear non-proliferation regime through diplomacy. No matter what else is happening in the world, the United States is ready to pursue critical arms control measures. A nuclear war cannot be won and must never.
Biden spricht sich ganz klar gegen den Einsatz von Nuklearwaffen aus, denn ein Krieg mit Kernwaffen könne nicht gewonnen werden, so der US-Präsident. Und geht damit auch auf die Androhung Moskaus ein, diese möglicherweise einsetzen zu können.
At the 10th NPT review conference. And again today, as I said, they're making irresponsible nuclear threats to use nuclear weapons. China is conducting an unprecedented concerning nuclear buildup without any transparency. Despite our efforts,
China hat kein transparentes Atomprogramm. Dies kritisiert Biden. Dies könne nicht sein. Die USA seien immer vorbereitet, ihren Verbündeten beizustehen. Die USA werden absolut nicht erlauben, dass ein nuklearer Krieg geführt wird, sich dagegen einsetzen. Wir können nicht zusehen, wie die Welt rückwärts geht.
Perhaps singular among this body's achievements stands the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is the standard by which our forebears challenged us to measure ourselves. They made clear in 1948, human rights are the basis for all that we seek to achieve.
Biden spricht die Grundsätze der Grundrechte an, die 1948 gegründet wurden.
In Xinjiang, detailed recent reports by the Office of UN and US reports detailing by the US High Commissioner.
Die bis heute gelten sollen. Die weiter gelten sollen.
Increased repression of women and girls by the Taliban in Afghanistan. And today we stand with the brave citizens and the brave women of Iran.
Er spricht auch über Frauenrechte in Afghanistan, die durch die Taliban stark eingeschränkt werden, die Frauenrechte im Iran.
By those countries that unleash the full potential of their populations, where women and girls can exercise equal rights, including basic reproductive rights, and contribute fully to building a stronger economies and more resilient societies, where religious and ethnic minorities can live their lives without harassment and contribute to the fabric of their communities, where the LGBT...
Er setzt sich also für Frauenrechte ein, für Mädchen und Frauen, für Minderheiten, für die LGBTQ+-Community, die nicht eingeschränkt werden sollen, sondern normal an der Gesellschaft teilhaben müssen und nicht zurückgedrängt werden dürfen.
Let me end with this. This institution, guided by the UN Charter and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, is at its core an act of dauntless hope. Let me say that again. It's an act of dauntless hope.
Er redet also von einem Akt der Hoffnung Gottes, den wir alle schreiten müssen. Die Welt
Think about how divided the people of the world must have felt with the fresh grief of millions dead, the genocidal horrors of the Holocaust exposed. They had every right to believe only the worst of humanity. Instead, they reached for what was best in all of us, and they strove to build something better. Enduring peace, comity among nations, equal rights for every member of the human family.
Weltweit muss es Frieden geben, weltweit müssen Menschenrechte gewahrt werden.
But our capacity is greater. Our commitment must be greater still. So let's stand together.
Lasst uns alle zusammenstehen, so Biden.
That nations of the world are united still. That we stand for the values of the UN Charter.
Dass sämtliche Länder die Werte der UN-Charta schätzen und sich daran orientieren.
We're not passive witnesses to history. We are the authors of history. We can do this We have to do it for ourselves and for our future.
Wir müssen aus den Fehlern der Vergangenheit lernen
Thank you for tolerance.
und das muss
Listening to me. I appreciate very much.
in der Zukunft für eine bessere Zukunft.
On behalf of the General Assembly, I wish to thank
Das war also die Rede
States of America
Joe Bidens
President just made. And I request
in New York bei der UN-Vollversammlung.
May I request representatives to remain seated while we suspend the meeting for 5 minutes before resuming to hear the next speaker.
Der US-Präsident hatte sich am heutigen Tag bei der UN-Vollversammlung geäußert. In seiner Rede kritisierte er unter anderem den Einmarsch Russlands in der Ukraine und rief die Welt auf, sich zusammenzufinden.
Russische Teilmobilmachung. Präsident Putin ordnet die sofortige Einberufung von 300.000 Reservisten an.